What's going on, everyone? My name is Steve, and it is a sad day in the neighborhood today. I don't know if you can tell from the looks of it, but my 3D printer has seen better days. It is currently not working, and that's the bad news. This is not how I want to spend my weekend, but the good news is I believe I have a way to fix it, and I have a path to making this thing work as good as new. Fingers crossed. So let me tell you what happened, and that way, hopefully, you don't make the same mistake that I made. So this all started a few days ago when I was printing, and I was finding, let me see if I have it around here somewhere. I printed a couple things. I printed this little kitty, obviously, the Cali cat, which looks all right, but there was one that it kept on being under extruded. It was an axolotl. I might have thrown it away. So I printed an axolotl, and it was just consistently being under extruded. I toyed with some of the settings, and this filament, I know from experience, doesn't really need to be that hot. So it was odd to me, and I tried changing the temperature and a few other, like, speed. And then it kind of occurred to me that I hadn't changed the nozzle in a while. Like, it's been a long time since I've swapped out the nozzle. The nozzle didn't look terrible, but hey, let me see. I'll show you in just a second what the nozzle looked like. But it had been a while, so I thought, just to do my due diligence, I have seen issues before with like artifacts on the prints and slight extrusion issues if the nozzle's worn out. And I'd been testing a lot of filaments. Maybe I'll do a video on my most recent filament haul. But I've been testing a lot of abrasive filaments, and I thought maybe that had something to do with it. So let me see. Hold on. Let me try to set my camera up here. I'm recording this on my smartphone. I don't know if you can tell, but luckily I have a little tripod. And let me turn the light on here. Okay. So let me explain what happened. So, well, here's the hot end, which is not supposed to be in my hand. It should be up there. But what happened was I unscrewed. I have this thing here. And keep in mind, it was hot while I was doing this. So I warmed it up. I unscrewed the nozzle, and as you can see, I mean, not the finest nozzle in the world. It's got some residue, but the whole, it is, listen, it's a used nozzle, but it's not that bad. I've seen worse. So I unscrew the old nozzle, take the new nozzle, and I screw it in. And the whole point of this is you want, and at least with a Bowden setup, like I have a Bowden setup, what you want is you want the Bowden tube to be flush as close as possible to the end of that hot end. You want it to be just butting up against it with no space in between. If there's space in between, you'll have build up a filament there, and that can cause, I've had issues with stringing that I believe was caused by that. It wasn't retracting properly, and that's my understanding of the issue. I've had issues where the nozzle isn't in all the way. So being myself, being who I am, I twisted it. Let me show you. I twisted it, and then, oh, this is the new one. Hold on. I twisted it, and sure enough, I twisted it one revolution too tight, and I think you can guess what happened. It is now a stripped heat block. So this here is the heat block, and it is stripped. No matter how much I turn this, it is not going to tighten. Actually, I think I just tightened it now. Hold on. That would be hilarious if I just tightened it. No, I didn't. It's stripped. So, like, you can get it to where it's kind of snug, but at the end of the day, it is not. It's not firmly in there at all. I mean, it's shaky. I could not print with this. So I was annoyed because I really wanted to print, but I also thought maybe I can get a better hot end. That's something I've been thinking about. Maybe I should upgrade to direct drive. These are all things I was thinking about. But then I found on Amazon for like $10, I can get a pack of 3 of these heat blocks. So I said, wait a second. So, whoops, don't mind me. So I said, wait a second, because I thought the heat block and the wire were attached. I thought they were one unit. Well, it turns out I could take a screwdriver and pop it through here. And then this is the element that heats up. This, from the looks of it, looks like it's a thermometer that checks the temperature, and I can completely remove the heat block. So that's cool because now I just don't have to upgrade the whole hot end. I mean, this is the part that heats up. I don't have to upgrade the whole thing. I still eventually may, because there are better hot ends out there. But all things considered, this now takes this from being, a complex hot end upgrade, or maybe I was considering moving to a direct drive extruder. Now, all I have to do is order those parts. And they just arrived, and I'm going to have to install these a little bit later and see how these work. But basically, these are hot ends. And the idea is you pop one of these in. These are hot heat blocks. I made a mistake. And it's nice. It comes with, what do you call these? A heat break? I forget what you call these. But it comes with everything. And I think these are just good parts to have, even if I ultimately end up upgrading the hot end, or if I end up upgrading like my extruder. These are handy to have, and if this ever happens again, I'll have at least one or two more on hand. So $10 on Amazon. If I can, I'll put a link to it in the description. I don't know. YouTube apparently doesn't want me putting links, so I might not be able to. But that's the story with this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to upgrade this, and I'm going to basically pop in this heat block into the heating element, and then I'm going to test it out and see how it works. So stay tuned. Hope you don't make this mistake. If you haven't, be careful tightening, and especially make sure not to over tighten your hot end or your nozzle into the heat block. Be careful about that. But if you do make the mistake, it looks like it's a pretty inexpensive fix. So stay tuned, and let's see how this ends up turning out. All right. So if you see here on the left-hand side, we have the old heat block. Hopefully you can tell this is the old one. Needless to say, this has seen better days. And if you look closely on the inside, you can see the threading, or the lack thereof. And I mean, no wonder why I'm not able to get the hot end to stay in. There's practically no threads for it to grip onto. So luckily, we're replacing it with this nice new hot end. And luckily, it has the new heat break. And what we'll do is we'll take the heat sink, and we will... so first of all, I made sure that the nozzle is firmly snug up against the heat break. That's the first step. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach the heat sink, and then I'll figure out how to attach it over there to the printer. Attaching the heat sink was actually a piece of cake. It was super easy. It was just those little two screws down there. Let's see. It was just these two guys on the bottom, the one on the left and the one on the right. One thing I will say is... it would be nice if it came with extra of those screws, because you could tell that they're kind of old. But one thing I want to say is whenever you're doing something like this where there's like two screws, you want them to be tight, but you also want to make sure that one is not significantly tighter than the other. So it's always a good idea to tighten this one a little bit, then go to the right one, tighten it a little bit, then go back to this one, tighten it, then go back to that one. And then make sure it's snug, and then make sure the final one is snug. Don't screw one all the way in, make it nice and tight, and then try to go to the other one. That should be kind of self-explanatory, but I've seen a lot of people make that type of mistake. Hey, I just wanted to pause the video real quick and explain something that happened to me. So in the clip that you just saw, the heat sink and the heat block were pretty securely attached with those two screws. However, once I put everything back on the printer and I started heating things up, it actually seemed like those screws were kind of loose. So I'm guessing that heating up the printer, changed some of the fitting between the metals and actually made the heat block kind of loose. So I tightened the screws a little bit more once the block was heated, and that seemed to solve my problem, and everything was working totally fine. So just wanted to explain the situation that happened with me. I wasn't able to just tighten it once and forget about it. I had to sort of make sure it was snug once the printer started heating up, and then everything was good to start printing. I also forgot to take a video of me putting the heating rod and thermistor back inside the heating block, but it was a pretty simple fix. There was just these little tiny screws that I had to tighten, and made sure everything was nice and snug, but otherwise it was super easy. That's what you're seeing in this photo right here. All right, so before I finish assembling this whole thing and put the fan cover back on, I wanted to at least make sure that the thing worked. So I decided to preheat the hot end to like 200 degrees, 201 in this case. And as you can see, it's steadily increasing, which means a couple things. It means that the hot end, or I don't know what you call it, but the little round piece right there, that piece is heating up. And it also means that the thermistor, which is that little clear looking wire, it means that that is reading the temperature back to the printer firmware. So it's making it hot, and then it's also registering, hey, I'm 201 degrees, or it looks like in this case it just dropped for a sec. Sometimes it does that. I smell something. It's probably the heat block getting hot for the first time. But what I'll do is I'll attach the Capricorn tubing, and I'll try running some filament through, and I don't suspect we'll have too many issues going forward, but I'll just do a last sanity check before putting the thing back together. Okay, so I'm spinning the extruder right now. There we go. Okay, so it's definitely getting hot. Let me retract it a little bit. Okay, take this out of the way, and let me put the rest of this thing back together. One thing I wanted to just point out as a little recommendation, a lot of people use tie wraps along here to sort of group all the wires together and the PTFE tubing. I actually use these little wire ties. They're like Velcro. Super helpful. That way I don't have to cut tie wraps and reapply them. I'm just going to peel this Velcro, put the PTFE tubing behind there, and then re-Velcro it. So it'll be a super easy fix. So if you have those laying around, it's a nice little enhancement that makes it look a little bit nicer and saves you some time and saves you having to find the clippers. So there you have it, everyone. That was how I broke my 3D printer and how I fixed my 3D printer. And one other thing I just wanted to mention is if you do anything relating to the hot end or the heat block, be careful, obviously, because it gets very hot, and be careful not to touch it. But also, make sure that you remember to re-level your bed before doing any printing. It sounds simple, but it's really easy to forget if you just want to try doing a print. It can sometimes be easy to forget that you have to re-level the bed. So make sure you do that. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you learned something, and thanks for watching.